This is The Guide Gals, a modern, wedding-focused podcast by the experts at Here Comes the Guide. I'm Chelsea, a designer and inspired creative who's probably racked up over 6,000 hours on Pinterest, and the friend who's going to shoot it to you straight.
And I'm Caroline, a social media manager who is obsessed with dogs as ring bearers and will inevitably cry over your wedding video. We've seen it from all sides. We've been brides, planners, bridesmaids, and have worked with standout brands throughout the industry.
Think of us as an extension of your wedding party and hang out with us as we share the ins, outs, ups, and downs of the road to I Do.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Guide Gals podcast. Today we're going to talk about some questions that you might want to ask your wedding venue as you choose your dream wedding space.
Choosing your wedding venue is really important, but it can also be really confusing. So we've come up with some questions that you can ask a wedding venue to make sure that you're making the right decision for you.
Obviously, we're biased, and we really are big fans of using Here Comes the Guide in finding your venue. The site is really built to help you connect with the perfect venue, finding all of the amenities, all of the uses, views, just finding the perfect fit.
So once you've narrowed down your list and you have some site visits scheduled, it's really important to know the information that you need to gather about those venues. So we've compiled a list and we're going to go through it for you today.
But before we go through that list, we always have to talk about what we're drinking today. Chelsea, what do you have?
Home coffee.
But in the
Hazelnut creamer.
a classic drink choice. And the mug.
Yeah. We went to Maine together, and I got this mug at Sheepscot River Pottery, actually.
Yeah.
I remember the place's name. In Edgecombe.
Yes, yeah. Because I think
Yeah.
there were two different stores for them, and we ended up at both of them on our trip.
Uh-huh.
And we saw the same lady. I do not believe for a second that she would ever listen to our podcast. I don't think she needs wedding planning materials anytime soon. But if you ever are listening to this, we love you. We love the pottery, and we're so glad we got to be there.
Yeah, she's not our target demographic for sure.
No, for sure not. But she was
we're
very
happy
sweet.
To have experienced that. What are you drinking, Caroline?
I am sorry if I just smacked my microphone. So if in the recording, guys, if I made a terrible sound, I'm really sorry. But I also have a little home coffee today. Well, I have a mocha kind of situation. I wanted to have brown sugar and caramel, but I accidentally left my brown sugar jar open, so it completely dried out and is rock solid. So had to switch gears a little bit, so it's more of a mocha situation. And my mug,
it's really cute.
I wish I could show it to you. I almost just flipped it over and I would have dumped my coffee on me. But on the bottom, there's like a little dog that's like holding the balloons on this. So it's from Florida. It's from Naples, Florida. Don't remember exactly what store, but that's where my mug is from. In this episode, we are going to go over a lot of questions, and we don't really have the time to deep dive into each and every piece. While we would love to be able to do that, this episode would have been like 2 hours long, and we're going to just do some of the basics. But if you do want us to do a deep dive on any of the things that we talk about in this episode, let us know. We are happy to go over them maybe in a later episode, or just answer you in DMs, or just send us a message on our website. So we're really just going to talk through some questions. We're going to list them out for you. We might pick and choose a couple for us to talk a little bit further about. So the first question is, ask your wedding venue is, what dates are available in the month I'm considering? Of course, that's important to know when they're available, if you can even get married there.
Yes, and it's becoming more and more popular to do weddings on weekdays or like off days. So a lot of places do have, more availability if you're like dead set on getting married in the month of May during a certain year. You might be able to have like a Thursday or a Friday wedding, or even a Sunday wedding. I love those, like I love a Friday wedding just because you get to have like the whole weekend. And I know there's like a lot of concern about people like people are gonna have to take off work or whatever. And a lot of times people are taking a day off of work anyway if they're going to a wedding. So like everything's gonna be okay. Also, a lot of places will offer discounts for, days that aren't a Saturday. So definitely worth checking into as well.
Absolutely. I'm going to quickly go through the rest of this list, but Chelsea, interrupt me whenever you have things that you want to say. How many people can this location accommodate? Obvious reasons again. What is the guest list that you can accommodate there. What is the rental fee and what's included in that price? I'm going to say it's really important to break that out there. So definitely ask this question no matter who you're asking or where you're going. How many hours does this fee include? Is there an overtime fee if I stay longer? If you like to party, ask that question. How much is the deposit? When is it due? And is it refundable? That I feel like is super important, especially after coming out of the 2020 wedding season. Ask that question. What is the payment plan for the entire bill and what forms of payment do you accept? Is it a lump sum? Is it something that you pay over a couple of months? Whatever that is, make sure you ask that question. Can you have your ceremony and your reception there, or is it an additional cost for one or the other? Are there changing areas for the bridal party, for the groomsmen, for whomever? If you need those areas, make sure you ask if they're available. And can you have a rehearsal dinner here? Is that something that they can accommodate? Or maybe even like a brunch the next day? Like if you're interested in making it a fuller experience or having multiple little events over your wedding, make sure you ask that. And if they do allow for a rehearsal, how much time is allotted? This one's really important. What's the cancellation policy? Because we're assuming you guys don't need the cancellation policy, but it's good to know just in case maybe you decide, actually, we're going to elope. Or you decide that, actually, this doesn't fit our vibe. Or maybe, and sometimes this does happen, of course, maybe you call it off. What's the cancellation policy?
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously when you're booking a wedding, you'd probably have the intention of going through with it. So yeah, but it's good to make sure you ask this question and at least have it in the back of your mind, make note of it. Because some places will offer you some sort of refund. Maybe not a full refund on like the stuff you've paid, but maybe something, especially if you give them enough cancellation notice where they can still book another event on your date. But yeah, it's something you're definitely going to want to make note of, because and maybe even steer away from a place that definitely does not offer any refunds for any type of cancellation, is super rigid in their ways. If that gives you an uneasy feeling, I think it's like good to follow your gut or like listen to your gut with stuff like that.
And I feel like that kind of goes into the next like question you should ask is, are there contingency plans? So like maybe you don't cancel, but maybe you need to have some backup plans in place, like asking about that. Also, like if for some reason something needs to change in your original plans, like are there potential fees or losses that could come up with that? As well as, do they have liability insurance? Because maybe it's not on you. Maybe something goes on their end. What type of insurance do they have? I think that's another important thing to ask.
Yeah, and that's something too that a lot of people, like including myself, might not even think of like being something that's necessary. Like if you have like a crazy cousin who breaks something or like does something nuts like during your wedding, you could be responsible for paying for whatever needs to be fixed or replaced or whatever. So yeah, that's another thing that isn't fun or glamorous, but like you should probably be aware of what their policy is for all that. Okay, the next category of questions that we're going to go into is all about food and drinks. I'm just going to go ahead and roll through some questions as well that we think that you should definitely touch on. So number one is going to be, do you have an in-house caterer or a list of preferred caterers, or do I need to provide my own? Even if there is an in-house caterer, do I have the option of using an outside caterer instead? So for some people, like depending on your non-negotiables, your priorities, and your wants for your wedding, you might like say like, oh, you know what? I really, really want to have like a tamale food truck come in. Like I want to do that. But your venue might not allow any outside food or catering to be involved at all. So that's something to be like for sure aware of. If you don't really care, it can be really nice having a venue that has their own catering. It's kind of like all set up for you. And yeah, a lot of venues also work from a list of preferred caterers. So that means that you have your choice to pick like from that list, and they might not allow anybody outside of that list. So definitely questions to ask, things to be aware of. Because food is like a super memorable part of your wedding for yourself and your guests. So another question is, if you hire your own caterer, is there a kitchen available for them? So the difference here is going to be will the food be able to be prepped on site, meaning it'll be like very fresh, or is the caterer going to have to prepare food off site in their own kitchen away from the venue and bring everything over in like hot boxes? Which, I mean, I think that a lot of caterers have like pretty much perfected this, but it's just not going to be as fresh as something that would be prepared on site. So once again, just like preference there.
Yeah. And there are caterers who do have things that they can haul to the site depending on who you choose for that. So that might be a question not only to ask the venue, like making sure you know what type of space is available to an outside caterer, but also asking your caterer, hey, do you have these things available to haul into the venue?
Okay, some more questions concerning food and drinks. Is there a food and beverage minimum? What's the tax and service charge? These are all like little extra things that can add up at the end. Can we do a food tasting before we finalize our menu selection, and does it cost extra? A lot of times this will be included by your caterer or your venue if the catering is on site. They will kind of like let you do a tasting, which is like a really fun experience. You get to like eat good food, but sometimes it does have an extra charge and sometimes they don't allow it. So once again, if food is really important to you, you're going to want to make sure that you have the ability to taste things before.
Yeah. Yeah. And even while you're talking about your menu selection, I would also ask about how they accommodate dietary restrictions. I say that because I am gluten-free, dairy-free, and probably should be like soy-free, but I'm not. But that's something to ask because, of course, there's going to be somebody on your guest list who may have some sort of accommodation that's needed. So just make sure you ask here and make sure that they can accommodate it. Do they need extra information? Like, just talk about it at this point.
Yeah, that's a really good call. I didn't even think of that because I eat everything, but there's going to be someone on your guest list that has some sort of allergy or something. Another question, are there tables, linens, chairs, plates, silverware, and glassware provided, or will I have to rent them or get them through a separate caterer? Another really important question to ask about all of those things, because sometimes renting things comes with an extra charge, so it's just another expense that can add up in the end. Can you bring a cake from an outside baker, or do you have to have a cake made on site? That's another thing. Sometimes there's special rules about all of that. Sometimes you can get from any bakery you want. But yeah, another really important question to ask. Another one, is there a cake cutting fee? And so yeah, that's one of those other like hidden costs, which we have a whole episode on stuff like that, like things that can kind of sneak up on you. But sometimes another question to ask, like a follow-up to that one, if you get a cake on site, sometimes there isn't a cutting fee. Like sometimes they waive that if you don't do like an outside baker. So yeah, just
or even if you
questions.
ask if like, as you're talking about like cakes and cake cutting, one thing you could ask is if a family member or a friend does the cake cutting for you and there is a fee that they usually associate with cake cutting, they may waive that. So ask that if you do have a friend or family member who'd be willing to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And then concerning the bar, some questions you should ask about that are, can you bring your own wine, beer, or champagne? And what about hard liquor? Certain venues can like have certain rules about certain types of alcohol, so really important to ask. Is there a corkage fee? Another thing that can add up. And another question, are they licensed to provide alcohol service? So yeah, you shouldn't go in with like any expectations too, because every place is different.
Right. Because even for wineries, which is like, yeah, of course they're serving alcohol, they may not be able to serve like hard liquor. They may need like separate licenses for that. Or yeah, if you're at a winery, they may be able to provide so much. But then if you want to have other booze available, then you have to hire an outside company.
Yeah. And you also want to ask, how is alcohol priced, and is there a bar minimum? Lots of cost associated questions. And are there additional charges for bar staff? So yeah, all questions to ask. A lot of these, like I said, are like concerning money and your overall budget. Lots of little things that can really sneak up and just like add up when you like come up with that fully itemized list. So it's important to ask these questions so that you have a really good idea of if all the things that you want are going to fit into your budget at the end of the day.
The next category we're going to talk about are the decor and other associated rentals. We kind of talked about some in terms of the food and beverage aspect, but there are some others that you want to ask about as well. So first and foremost, are you allowed to bring in your own decorations? Which may sound like a dumb question, but with certain venues, this is something that they may keep you limited to the decor that they have or just have certain specifications. So just something good to ask.
Yeah, and like sometimes like if you want to DIY a lot of stuff too, like they might have certain restrictions on like how early you can access the venue to like set up. So even if they like allow outside stuff, you might not have like ample time to actually make it happen. So that's an important question to ask. And you want to keep the existing decor in mind too, so that if you bring stuff in or you have like another idea, you don't want things to clash. Some parts, like if you're thinking of getting married somewhere and it has like a really rustic feel, but you wanted something that's like light and airy, there's only so much you can do, you know? And like there's only so many things that you'll probably be allowed to like move around or change or cover up. So I mean, you do really want to like fall in love with the space that the venue offers initially, even without decor.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
this is
super
something that
important.
comes up a lot with like winter weddings. At least that's like something I think about because of course every venue or like everyone's decorating for the holidays of some sort. And sometimes those decorations can, like you said, like pair so well. And other times like they're creepy Santa
Yeah, not the
decorations
vibe.
that no.
Yeah.
Yeah, good thing to ask.
Yeah,
Um
lots of these are great questions. And like venues might also have like photos they can show you, like if like for example you're like we're going to get married in December. You might say like do you guys typically decorate for you know like Christmas or like wintry decorations? And they might be like yeah, hey, here's some pictures like to show you that, and you might love that, and that actually might make things a lot easier for you because they might take care of a lot of that on their end. But yeah, something to be aware
Just good
of
to
for
clarify
sure.
all of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then also, like, kind of what you're saying with that Chelsea too is sometimes they have an inventory of decor. So if you want to see what's in their inventory, some places have like a little area that you can walk through, or you may need to ask for photos or something from it. It's just something that if they have it, great. Make sure you look at some of those examples. But not every place has an inventory, like decor inventory.
Yeah, sometimes they do have, like Caroline said, like that, like decor inventory. And sometimes it's like, yeah, you can use whatever you want, it's included. Sometimes, though, they have it almost set up as like a catalog where they're like, yeah, here's all the things. Here's like this really cool, like light up sign that you can use. And here's like, I don't know what else, like all kinds of like different stuff. And they might say, like, well, yeah, you can rent any of these things. This one's an extra $300. This one's an extra $20, like whatever it is. So, also something to be aware of that sometimes, yeah, that stuff is like a la carte will add up
Yeah.
in the end.
And with any of these decor items and in the rental space, you'll want to make sure to know if you can move things around or if everything has to stay as it is. If there is a big wagon wheel at the front entrance of the venue, like, can we move that or does that have to stay? Just thinking about those things is good.
Yeah. And some venues have restrictions on whether or not you can hang things from the ceilings or on the walls. Like if you really want to have like string lights or something like that, make sure that you check. It can probably come down to like them not wanting to damage the space. So, yeah.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
have some like a picture in your head, ask about it for sure if they can accommodate
Yes.
that.
And there's other things with this too that you can ask, like, okay, can you use candles? Can you actually light the candles, or do you need to have fake candles? Can you use confetti? Sparklers are a big one that people are starting to not allow as much, but they make for great photos. Like, I had a friend who wanted fireworks. Can we have lawn games, bounce houses, food trucks, animals? I don't know. Whatever your fun idea is, that could potentially be a liability, you're going to want to ask that question. Also, another thing to ask is, do you have signage or other aids to direct guests to my event? And do you provide heaters and or umbrellas for outdoor spaces? So if those apply to your event day, definitely ask about those.
Yeah. All super important stuff. Especially like the heaters and umbrellas and stuff like that. Like that can really like if you're getting married at like a season change time or something like that, that could make a huge difference to just like the happiness of you and your guests like while you're there. Yeah, lots of questions, but all good ones. Okay, the next category of questions that we're going to explore involves vendors and staffing. So the first one, can I hire my own vendors, or is there a preferred vendor list that we need to stick to? Once again, this is like we talked about with like catering. Sometimes you can have anybody like with like the correct licenses and stuff to operate, or sometimes like they have that preferred list and you have a choice on that list, but no one else from outside of that list can be a part of your day. Do you offer on-site coordination? If they do, what services are included with that? Can the venue accommodate a DJ or a live band? If you're dead set on a live band, you have to make sure that they can accommodate that, they have the correct space, all of that stuff. What security services do you offer? That's another important question to ask.
Yeah, and especially one that I feel like you may not think of, but what we recommend really is for the first 100 guests, you should have like 2 security professionals and then 1 additional security professional for every 100 after that. And you may be thinking that seems like overkill, but like if you listened to our horror stories episode, sometimes there are family spats that happen. Sometimes people dance on top of furniture they're not supposed to. Sometimes things happen. And so if you want to prevent people wedding crashing, if you want to prevent potential family brawls, or if you're even providing a fair amount of alcohol just to make sure that everyone stays safe, it's just a good piece of like liability protection for you, for your guests, for the venue. So yeah, if they offer security services, I'd take them up or maybe look into them outside of it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of places that are in like almost like shared space areas, like maybe you're getting married somewhere in like a city, like a downtown area that has just like a lot of stuff really close nearby where you could potentially get like even like foot traffic of like people like coming really close to your event or like trying to crash it or something. You know, like this might be more necessary at some places than others, but yeah, something to think about for sure. Not something that I would generally think about.
Nope.
A couple more questions. Do you provide a coat check service? What time can my vendors start setting up on the day of the wedding? That's a really important one because sometimes busy spaces will book like back-to-back events and like you just don't have the availability to get in there maybe as soon as you want.
Right, right. Or if they don't do multiple events, maybe you can come in the day before. That could be something that's helpful, but yeah, you're going to want to make sure. I think also this is something I mentioned in one of my recent episodes, my solo episode. We talked about the idea of pop-up weddings, that like there are these weddings that happen back to back so quick. Like if you're hiring outside vendors for it, you're also going to want to talk to them and make sure that like they know the quick time frame. But yes, asking your venue what the parameters of that time frame is important for the whole flow of the event, because your other vendors who are coming to the venue are going to need that information.
And a lot of these wedding venues are super experienced with the different types of events that they have. So they can probably give you a super clear answer and timeline on that you can give to like your florist or whoever needs to set stuff up. But yeah, definitely an important question to ask. You never want to assume that you can just like show up with like your family the night before with like all of your homemade decorations and start going crazy, because there might be like a reception going on for like someone else. So important to ask. One last question I have in this category is, does the venue provide assistance getting gifts and or decor back to a designated car or a hotel room after the wedding? Sometimes they do help with this. Sometimes this might be something that needs to fall on like a member of the wedding party, like a maid of honor, best man kind of situation, or even like moms and dads or something, making sure that that stuff gets handled and making sure that it like is safe, because you would never think that like maybe like a guest at your wedding would like steal something from you, but if it's in one of those more public places, like you don't want to leave like the cash box if you have one of those like sitting around until the next day where anyone can just access it. So
Right.
important. Yeah.
now we're going to explore some other logistics that you may want to talk to your venue about. First being, is there a separate space for cocktail hour? Just navigating where are all of these little events happening? I am personally someone who prefers a separate space for a cocktail hour than the reception, just because it helps with the flow of things. Also, once guests come into the reception space, they're immediately going to like make themselves at home, and then the couple like never gets to see their reception space in its full glory. I don't know. That may not matter to you, but I like for the flow of events for the cocktail space to be in a separate area.
I like a big reveal like that too. I like that. Yeah.
It feels so fun for everybody. I don't know. And then it also helps, like, again, logistically, the vendors have more time to make sure everything's in its place. Like, they focus on getting cocktail hour first, and then, like, it just splits things up so not everything has to be ready all at once. And then also wanting to know what the sound system looks like for all of the spaces. I think this is important for so many reasons, because if you want to have music at cocktail hour, but it is in a different space, what does the sound system look like there? What does it look like for speeches? Sound is not always something you're going to think about, but it is really important to the overall event.
Right. And if you're getting married at a space that is primarily a wedding venue, then like something like this is like something that they probably have like on lock. like they really like have it down. It's like almost repetitive for them. But if you happen to be getting married somewhere that maybe isn't necessarily like a primary wedding venue, like maybe they do other things, maybe it's somewhere like more in nature or something, like figure out where you need power, like outlets and stuff, and if you need to bring in like extension cords and like stuff like that, make sure that you're becoming aware of that. It's certainly something that you can ask of the venue, and a lot of times they might be like, oh yeah, we have that figured out, we do that every weekend. But other times they might simply be able to say like, okay, you know what, we might not have done this like a bunch of times before, but here are like spaces where you can get power, here's a way that we think you could situate it. Yeah, but things to think about for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Some other things to ask in terms of logistics are there any noise restrictions? That's important for if you're doing like a live band, DJ, also depending on the time of your event, if it goes late into the evening. Is there parking on site? And if so, is it complimentary? If not, where will my guests park? Are cabs, ride shares easily accessible from the venue? If a shuttle service is needed, can you assist with setting it up? How many restrooms are there? So important to ask, because this could, oh my gosh, it could become like so chaotic so quickly.
Yeah, a line at the bathroom is always like a real bummer. But the general rule is that there should be at least 4 restrooms per 100 people. So, I mean, the more the better, totally. The more the better.
Oh, yeah.
But that's like kind of a general rule. Try to keep things moving along.
Yeah.
That area.
And then what overnight accommodations do you provide? Do you offer a discount for booking multiple rooms, or a complimentary room or upgrade for the newlyweds? This only applies if they have on-site accommodations. And if no accommodations are available, what are the nearest hotels to the venue?
Yes. And that's really something to think about too. Like, how convenient is it for your guests to get home? I know like we talked about like the ride share and like stuff like that. But it is really great when there are hotels nearby to make sure that everyone gets where they need to go safely. And also sometimes venues will have partnerships and recommendations for certain hotels, and sometimes they can get you some sort of discount or like room block type of thing at recommended places nearby.
All right, last 2 questions under logistics is the site accessible for people with disabilities? If you're at an outdoor venue that's a little bit more rugged, off the beaten path, and your sweet grandma is in a wheelchair, you need to think about how she's getting to and from the ceremony site or whatever it is. And do you have a recycling policy? We'd love for our wedding to give back. Or I guess I would even expand this to like, do you have any other like sustainable practices? I know a lot of places that grow vegetables or food on site, grow flowers on site. So if that's something that's important to you, I would definitely ask that question.
And it's like a fun fact too that you can kind of share with your guests, like especially like if they have an on-site garden where like some of the food that they're eating is coming from. I think it's a fun thing to add. Like even if you do like print out menus or something, saying like, oh, the potatoes. I don't know if that's the potatoes that you're eating came from right over there in that garden. How exciting!
I would love
I
that.
think that's
I would
really
love
cool.
that detail.
Yeah.
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 So, like we talked about at the beginning of the episode, we're huge fans of Here Comes the Guide because that's where we work, but also because they do such a good job at finding, like, making the experience of finding a wedding venue so easy. So now you are going to search for your venue and you're going to use these questions to ask your wedding venue, but there's also some other resources that we just wanted you to be aware of as you're searching and asking those questions. So there are articles on herecometheguide.com, like best of wedding venues by state. So you can search by state, and maybe you're getting married in your home state. Maybe you're getting married in a state you're not as familiar with. So this list is very good for that, to find the best of those venues. We have 10 tips for picking the perfect wedding venue as an article and as another episode. So if you haven't listened to that one already, that's another great one to pair with this episode. We also have a fun one. It's called The Best Wedding Venues for Your Zodiac Sign.
Oh, I love
Chelsea
that
and
one.
I
It's
love.
so fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so fun. And honestly, even if you've already picked out your wedding venue, maybe you just want to go look at that one for fun. I think that one is just like a, I don't know, feel good piece. And we also want to make sure you know that there's something available for you that's the difference between venue coordinators and wedding planners. So that's a good thing to think about as you're talking about all of these questions, because honestly, wedding planners are going to know this type of list, are going to help you with these types of questions, not only for your venue, but other vendors. And that's different from what a wedding coordinator does. So that's another great resource for you to have in the planning process.
Yeah, and there's a lot more over on Here Comes the Guide. Like that's just like skimming the surface of the like articles and resources and stuff that's on there for you. So yeah, you can really get carried away looking at all of like the different things that are on there, but a lot of it's really fun stuff. But yeah, this was a super fun episode. I think it was one that was like a little bit more, you know, like we have a task at hand. We have to make sure these questions get asked. But it's like really important, a really important piece of choosing your wedding venue, which is like one of the biggest pieces of planning your wedding. So I hope it was really helpful to you guys. And yeah, if you want to, you can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. So we're everywhere as the Guide Gals Podcast. We're also on YouTube, so you might be watching us right now. But if not, we do have video versions of all of these episodes on YouTube, and that is on the Here Comes the Guide YouTube channel. You can follow us on social media. We're on Instagram as the Guide Gals Podcast. We're also on TikTok as the Guide Gals Pod. Do I have
Correct,
that right,
yeah,
Caroline?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Listen to our past episodes if you want to hear why our username's a little bit different there. And you can also reach out to us on Instagram. We love hearing from you guys, hearing stories, but you can also reach out to us on our website, which is theguidegalspodcast.com. Like I said, we'd love to hear from you guys. If you have episode suggestions, questions, anything like that, you can head on over to our contact page there. But we also have lots of free resources for you there. We have a full printable bundle that you can download with like a totally free. You can download it there with some planning resources. And then, of course, we have our full episode library. So yeah, but like I said, this was fun. And I hope it was helpful to you to get all of these questions, make note of them so that you can pick the venue that is the best fit for you and your partner.
Yes. Lots of things that we went over today. Hope you were taking notes. But again, if you need anything else, you know where to find us. And until the next episode, cheers.
Cheers.